without any further ado, we are going to get to the portion of the program known as the Time Interview. And it is my fantastic honor to ask such a legend to the stage. He needs no introduction, but to pay respect to his accomplishments, I'm going to say a couple of quick words anyway. Michael Johnson is one of the greatest long sprinters in track and field history, one of the most prominent athletes of his generation or any generation. He won 9 World Championship gold medals, a gold in the 400-meter relay in 1992's Barcelona Olympic Games, and the individual gold in the 200 and 400 meters in Atlanta, which makes him the only person to win individual medals in those events in a single Olympics, and the 400 individual gold in Sydney. He is the founder of the Michael Johnson Sports Performance Center in Dallas, and he is a sought-after motivational speaker and TV sports commentator. Please give me a wide, wide round of applause for Michael Johnson.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's really exciting.
Glad to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about you're a presenter for the BBC, and you are very well known in the United States. You are, you're a sports legend and even a celebrity, but you're particularly beloved in the UK. Can you talk a little bit about why you think that is? That while you are respected and you're a towering, towering figure in the United States, you are an even bigger deal in the UK, even though you ran for America and you won your Olympics for America. Just tell me a little bit about what you think the sports culture differences are.
Yeah, it has actually very little to do with sports and more to do with a very wise, I guess, decision, not by me, by my agent, to work with BBC and have most people believe that I actually live here when I'm actually in San Francisco. People ask me all of the time, do you live here? What it has to do with is that I made the decision many years ago after I retired as far as a career path that I wanted to do many different things. And to do television in the States, you have to be a dedicated television personality, which is not what I wanted to do. BBC has allowed me to pick the projects that I would like to work on, major events, documentaries, and that sort of thing. And so I contribute to a lot of programs here. And so it's really about relevance at the end of the day. People see me on television here quite often. I write a column for the Times. I was with the Telegraph previously. And so it's just a relevance. This is a great market for me. It started with me working with BBC and covering athletics, and then that expanded into other things. And so it's just been a great market for me. I love London, so I travel here quite often, and it works out well.
So when did the broadcasting portion of your career begin?
The first time I actually started broadcasting, I was still competing. Actually in the 2000 Olympics and 1999 World Championships, after my competitions were finished, I went into the broadcast booth, and it was just, I enjoyed it. I loved talking about sports, trying to educate the viewer as to what's going on and what they're seeing, and I took to it, and I've enjoyed it ever since.
So I'm assuming then that you've broadcast from multiple summer games then. Must have been Sydney, must have been Beijing.
Yeah. This London will be my third as a full-time broadcaster since I retired. Sydney was my last as a
So let's talk about London. Compare and contrast it to what you've already seen about Beijing. What do you think is to come? What can we look forward to? What can we get excited about? I mean, I don't know if my intro remarks, I said that so far, all of the logistics and disorganization that certain media outlets said we're going to be guaranteed, at least for me, have not transpired. So what are you looking forward to the most?
Yeah, well, the games haven't started yet. Look, when you're talking about an Olympic Games, because of the historical sense of the games, because of it only takes place every 4 years, the format guarantees the competition on the pitch, on the courts, and on the track, wherever you might be. The competition is going to be great. It doesn't matter how well or how poorly the games are organized and what city they're in, because you're guaranteed with the format of the games to see the best athletes at their best. So that part takes care of itself. The other side of it then is how well the local organizing committee organizes the games. and it's really trying to organize chaos. It is trying to be ready and prepared for any eventuality, anything that may happen that could absolutely ruin the games. 1996, the Olympic Park bombing, Centennial Park bombing, that was managed very well, so it didn't disrupt the games. If you have something that disrupts the games, it could just be catastrophe. So at the end of the day, it's really about making sure that the spectators have a great time, make sure that people have they're able to get into the venues. Beijing was a little bit of a mess simply because every day, I went to the same checkpoint to get into the Olympic Village, Olympic Green, every day, and there was a different set of circumstances each day. It was, today you can do this, tomorrow you can't. That was frustrating for many people. So you have to avoid that sort of thing. I remember sitting at a restaurant with some friends in downtown Beijing in the center of the city, and I've been to Beijing before, and it's a great city, but it didn't feel great during the games because they didn't want anyone gathering together. They didn't want any type of atmosphere, so there wasn't. And so we were commenting that we could be anywhere. It doesn't even feel like we're at the Olympic Games. I know that LOCOG has planned many different things around the city, big widescreen, big screen televisions and whatnot, so people can feel like they're a part of the games, even if they don't get a ticket, and most people didn't get a ticket.
Let's talk a little bit about the athletics themselves. We were all watching when Usain Bolt crashed through the record in 2008, and a lot of people remember your reaction to that event. Him specifically, or some of the track events specifically, what do you expect to happen here this year? Can we expect big things from him? Do you have new up-and-comers that you're taking a look at? What for the sprint and the track event specifically, you're the worldwide authority, what should we be keeping an eye on?
Well, we are actually going to be treated to an incredible 100-meter showdown, and it's primarily because Usain Bolt is not at his best right now. He's had the injury that he's been dealing with all season. He was beaten at the Jamaican trials by his countryman Johan Blake in the 100 meters and 200 meters, and he hasn't raced since that time. And he spent that time, from what I understand, trying to get ready and trying to get right. If Usain Bolt, I've said this all along, if Usain Bolt is at his best and healthy, then we're just sitting, deciding debating whether or not he's going to break another world record. But we already know who's going to win the race. There's no one that can run with him or challenge him when he is at his best, because he's just that good. And that's not that exciting to watch, and it's really difficult for me because then I have to try to think of something to talk about. So with this situation where he's been injured and he's still running very fast, and and Johan Blake is just, he's gaining confidence every day. Tyson Gay, the American record holder, is starting to come along at the right time. Justin Gatlin's also running very well also after coming off of, no one expected him to make another Olympic team after a 4-year ban from the sport. So it's shaping up to be very, very interesting for this 100 meters. There's a lot of different storylines with Johan Blake and Usain Bolt both being training partners. They're not really training partners. They're coached by the same coach, but you can imagine they're not going to come out onto the track at the same time and run side by side. That's not happening. So it's, some great stories. 100 meters should be very exciting. The Jamaicans dominated the sprints the last time around, and the Americans traditionally dominate the sprint, so it was a little bit surprising to see that happen. This time, they took all 3 medals in the 100 meters last time. Gold, silver, and bronze went to Jamaica. I don't see that happening this time. We've got some great American sprinters, Carmelita Jeter, who's the 100-meter world champion, Allison Felix, who's 3-time 200-meter world champion, and she has had an ongoing battle with Veronica Campbell-Brown, who's a 2-time gold medalist in the 200 meters. So over the last 8 years, one of them have won each one of the medals. It's just Veronica Campbell-Brown has won all of the Olympic medals, and Allison Felix has won the World Championship medals. So that's a great showdown as well. So it should be, across the board, I think we've got some great matchups, and that's what you want to see as opposed to just seeing one person run away with the race.
Now, speaking of Usain Bolt, we all know his famous victory sign when he wins a race. And it seems like the Olympics are a venue where the world is paying attention to sports that they don't pay attention to as much throughout the years. The victory sign, In the States, it was Lolo Jones last time. So, you know, a lot of times the charismatic personalities become stars almost as much for their charisma as for the pure prowess of their athletics. So not just even track and field, but do you have your eye on any charismatic stars who might be breakout personalities?
Not really, because that sort of thing for me, you know, I'm not going to pay attention to your charismatic, you know, way unless you're actually winning. And so, you know, and what we're seeing is a lot of athletes now starting to kind of, after Usain Bolt, starting to kind of take on that same type of persona, or at least try to. But you've got to be winning. It's just like, I mean, if you're going to wear gold shoes, you better win. You know, I mean, I mean, you know, you have to win first, and that's what it's all about. And you know, a lot of these athletes will say, well, it relaxes me, and I'm an entertainer. You're an athlete first, and if you notice with Bolt, and he can afford to do it, but when he does his, you know, his kind of sign, you know, and this thing, you know, and he's kind of doing all of the antics just before the gun goes off, you will notice he goes into a very focused demeanor to accomplish the task at hand.
Now, because of this wonderful organization that we're all convened here to talk about, and because the Olympics are happening here in London, what do you think will be some of the lasting social justice or economic opportunity effects of the Games? Because, you know, we've all heard all of, you know, whether it's Munich or years past, that very often the pessimists say that there's not a whole lot of economic return or lasting social change that come out of Games. What do you think can happen in that regard in terms of London, or should happen to help ensure that there's a lasting benefit to these Games once all the athletes go home?
Sure. I think you know, we're starting now to see, you know, kind of a change of direction there. In the past, Munich was a great example. Montreal, they're still paying for the stadiums and venues from the Montreal Olympics. The stadium in Sydney, you know, sits there pretty much empty. Beijing as well. The Bird's Nest, as beautiful as it was, they don't have very many events there. And I think, you know, China could afford to invest those types of funds into new stadiums and whatnot, and infrastructure that was needed anyway. But up until this Olympics, you know, most cities were just really trying to avoid being left with this massive debt after the Games. But I think that, you know, part of the reason why London won the bid to begin with was the idea that, you know, instead of not losing money and leaving debt, that to leave a legacy and to leave something behind, so that when the Games have left the city, that there is something that's lasting in terms of a benefit to the city. And so I think the entire plan has been put together to do that. And I think that you know, we're already starting to see some of that. I mean, just what has happened over in the East End of London, near the stadium, in that area, the redevelopment there has been a positive to the city. I think, you know, with the stadium, you know, an athletic stadium, London has now won the rights to host the World Championships of Athletics. And so I think there will continue to be benefit down the road from the Games here. And I think that the way the entire stadium, the venues have been set up, many of them will be repurposed. Some of them are only temporary venues, and those sorts of things will ensure that there isn't this massive debt left over, but also the regeneration of that area will be a positive.
So they tell me we have only time for one more question, and thank you very much for joining us. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, though. You've made some headlines already. I think a lot of what you're saying sometimes gets misconstrued. It's a taboo subject in the United States, but you're putting it back on the table. There was a documentary, and you've introduced this concept that there's a lot of successful countries and a lot of successful individuals, especially in the track and field and the sprinting events, that goes all the way back to the legacy of the slave trade. Could you put it in context so that you're not misquoted, that what exactly you're trying to examine in opening this topic?
Yeah, I don't mind being misquoted. It doesn't bother me at all. You know, at the end of the day, you know, most people who saw the film, it's Michael Johnson, Survival of the Fastest, aired a few weeks ago on Channel 4. And what we did was I interviewed lots of different scientists and historians who have different theories on whether or not there is a link between the Atlantic slave trade and the dominance of Afro-Caribbean and African-American sprinters. And so what I did was interviewed all of these different people and listened to their theories. We knew that we never were going to come up with any concrete answer on this in the documentary or the film, nor did I attempt to come up with an answer, but rather to inform people and educate people about a lot of things that, quite frankly, I didn't even know. And then to have them hopefully provoke some thought and some debate and have people come up with their own opinions. Look, at the end of the day, we all know that there are many, many different factors that contribute to an athlete's success. I'm proof of that. But to your point, we live in a world where it's all about little sound bites and that sort of thing. So there was a sound bite that was taken, repurposed, and not only taken out of context, but without context. And so I was made to be seen as saying that if you have descended from slaves, then you're automatically fast. Well, and that there's, it's because your genealogy's been affected by that. I've got 4 siblings, and so their genealogy is very, very close to mine. They are not fast, I guarantee you. So I had already done that experiment myself. But the film was very informative. It was very well received, and so it was an incredible experience for me in making the film and tracing my own genealogy. And so it was a joy, and I'm very proud of it.
That's great. Michael, thank you very much for joining us today. We couldn't be more honored. Please, everyone. Thank you. Thanks very much. Really appreciate it.